I have some questions I have to remember because I'm a little sleepy right now, but it will come to me. I have some specific question. I felt like it's a little different than how we do. Oh yeah, I think specifically, like in the virtual sessions I've attended, that the representative, I mean the client herself does not really participate in the sense that basically you're facilitating all representatives doing the talking and stuff like that. So in this case, the client was sitting next to her, the facilitator, and she's actually telling the client what to say. So the client is speaking.
Sitting next to her.
Yeah.
The client is speaking, sitting, and what are the representatives doing?
So the representatives are moving around, and then the facilitator would instruct, representative to say certain things, but then also client is participating.
So did I get you right? The client is not represented in this constellation. There's no representative for the client.
No, the client is represented.
Aha.
But still, I think the client is doing the talking.
What is the client talking?
No, the facilitator tells her what to say.
I don't get it. The client is sitting at the chair next to the facilitator, and the client is also represented with a workshop participant in the workshop. And then when the representative, instead of the representative speaking, the client speaks sitting on the chair.
Yeah, I think
I have never seen that before, Michelle. I've never seen that before. I'm always surprised with what facilitators come up with. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I thought that was it's actually the participant was, I mean the client was actively, being part of the conversation.
I cannot comment on that because I wasn't there, and the picture I get is quite strange. But I can tell you for sure that you always, and we talk about that in actually this module, so hold your horses, we will get there. But there is always a choice whether you want, as a facilitator, the client to represent themselves or have a representative. But for me, that is a clear choice, either or, right? It's either the client represents themselves or they choose a representative for themselves. If they choose a representative for themselves, we facilitate with the representative. When they stand for themselves, when they don't want a representative, then of course the client themselves is the one who is in the constellation, right?
Yeah, I have to.
But two representatives, the client themselves and a representative for the client, both acting. I don't know even how the field would deal with that.
Oh, that may not be the case. I think there might be like individual cases where they choose to be represented or they choose to.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. No?
Yeah, in any case, I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, that is.
It is.
And beside that, how were the facilitate? Like, did you see something you have learned? Did you have these epiphanies? This is how it looks like. Was there anything like this?
I think definitely in that in-person environment, you really feel the movement that they naturally kind of move around. Whereas virtual here, I think you have to kind of imagine.
Yeah.
Sometimes because us, the facilitator was talking, and then the participant, the representative will just kind of spontaneously start to move around and do certain things. So this aspect is kind of more organic, I felt. Whereas I don't know how that gets translated into virtual, where we're all sitting here paying attention to you while you were talking.
Well, that's of course difficult in a workshop setting. So we are not talking about the training here, obviously. We're talking about a workshop. So this is why it's really important. I urge my trainees to go out and find some in-person workshops and not rely only on experiences online, because as exactly what you said, it's obvious that if you have never seen that or not repeatedly seen how facilitating looks like, you don't have the means to imagine it as a facilitator online. You cannot really, the online is just a tool that adds on to your skills to be able to provide as an experienced facilitator this methodology to others. But as a beginner facilitator, you cannot facilitate online a workshop. It is, I wouldn't even know where you would start with that, because you do need to see the people moving to draw your conclusion. That goes without saying, yeah. That goes without saying. I'm not teaching you how to facilitate online. That's not part of this training. I'm teaching you how to facilitate a group, yeah, but I'm using the means of online to convey the training content, yeah. And obviously, take part in our online workshops, but I do not expect you to be able to facilitate that. This is why when we have our practice workshops, where we also meet online, I always offer you to use the figurine board that I have here if you need a visual. If you cannot, some are better than others, Misha. Some are very good picturing everything, everybody who stands where and who's looking at whom, and others are a little bit lost with that. That's fine. That's no problem, because you will use family constellation facilitating definitely in person. So you will get groups together and practice with them when you start facilitating, right? So, and then the virtual realm is a complete different step that you or might or might not take. No?
Yeah. So there was the one interesting thing that I remember this facilitator a couple times, where this certain representative, that she would stand next to her and try to feel and validate whether she's who is she representing, or whether she claims she represents, but she's more like validating. Oh, is this
the facilitator?
Right? Yeah, I thought that was interesting. There was one case at the end. There was someone who stood up. She just felt like she's part of this constellation, but towards the end there was no role. It was not clear who she was, and then
somebody from the spectators.
Yeah, from the group, and she just spontaneously stood up. She said, "I felt like I need to be part of this."
Oh, that's a very good. I'm so glad you've been to this, because today, and we go right into it, we talk about all of this, because this is what we talk about. And I know you, Michelle, you are always one step ahead. So you bring everything to the table that we are actually eating in the next 3 hours, right? So let's talk about that when we get there. I'm going to share the screen, and then we can start right away. And we are recording already, so that's all great. So hang on. I'm in tomorrow's. Let me stop sharing. I have to go back. That's what we do tomorrow. Go back to what we're going to do today. There we go. Okay, can you see that? Training module 3? Awesome, okay. So welcome to our training module 3. The next 3 days, we are looking in the practical aspects of this work. I have titled it Staying Centered in the Truth. It's another book from Bert Hellinger. It's his third book. That is in German, Die Mitte fühlt sich leicht an. I have translated it to this title of this module because it gives us the feel for how it feels for the client and for the facilitator when the movement of the souls have been made, like the result. How do we get the results, right, that we want? And that is to be centered, to pull all the scatteredness back to us and be empowered, acting from our center, right? And that is basically what he talks about in his third book as well. So what does it mean for us? That means for us today, we are looking at the art of helping. The art of helping is also a book title from Bert Hellinger, or I think he calls it not the art of helping, but the order of helping, I think is his book called. Fantastic book. If you can get your hands on it, please read it. I break it down, just the most important information for you. So you know when you are facilitating family constellation in the method of Bert Hellinger, what kind of guidelines are you following? Like what ethics do you need? How do you work as a facilitator? Part 2, which is tomorrow, we look at how to structure a workshop. And then the day after, we are looking at personal development, unsolved emotions, and troubleshooting in a workshop setting. So today, we are looking at the art of helping. And it is an art. It is not, probably not even what you think it is. And what others think what helping is, right? It's a craft, it's a trade, if you will. It's something you learn, something you embrace, and it follows certain rules and regulations. Yeah. And that's what I teach you today. First of all, the most important part, because we are working with the orders of love, we need to establish where the right position of the helper is. To not reach the orders of love right away with us as a facilitator positioning us in the wrong place, right? Then we learn today how to lead the client. Then we also learn how to lead the group. We will talk about group dynamics. Then we will talk about leading the representatives. Then we talk about how we use and change the words we have learned last module in a workshop setting or when we work with clients. And we will also look at some traps we might fall into when facilitating a family constellation workshop. So it's a full program today. Take a deep breath and let's go on the right. I start with a quote from Bert Hellinger. All you have to do is to place yourself in the position as a facilitator and trust the field to guide you all the way. Yeah. Trust is here the key word. Trust is very important in your work. You don't need to trust in yourself. You don't need to trust in the workshop participants. You don't need to trust in the representatives. You definitely don't need to trust your client. You only need to trust the morphogenetic field, that it is there, it is working with you, and that it will give you the right information at the right time. That's what you need to trust. And then with this trust, you will be guided. And what he also says with this quote is that you also take one step at the other. You cannot be bothered or even thinking about the constellation and what the whole constellation might look like when the first representative has been chosen, right? You know nothing. I know nothing when the first representative is chosen. and the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, I still know nothing. Yeah, you are completely open and observe. And then we do that in the practice workshops. We start to inquire. And then very slowly, a picture starts to form. And then you take the first step, just the first. You don't need even to find this picture. It's just you get the information what the first step is, and you take only that without asking where it leads you. Yeah, that is the trust in the morphogenetic field. And I've seen facilitators failing there because they lose trust and they want to control it. They want to control the constellation. If you have this urge to control the constellation, it's done. It's not a family constellation anymore. It's a role play or whatever, family therapy, but it's not a family constellation because the field, the morphogenetic field, has no room to express itself. That brings us to the position of the helper. The position of the helper is at the bottom of the family system next to the client. Now, why do you think is that? Is there another position you can think of where the helper can be? Or where you might thought, where you might thought that the helper would be before you heard that? Maybe above everybody else? Or outside? There are lots of possibilities, but the right position for the helper is, and that's not only for family constellation, that's in the Art of Helping from Bert Hellinger, is always at the bottom because the helper is always the one who came last. Remember, second order of love, precedence, that applies to everyone who is working with the field of the family system, including the facilitator, is part of the family system. But temporarily, not permanently. Temporarily part of the family system while facilitating a constellation for the system. And because they are last, they are at the bottom with the client. But they are not there for the client. They are there for the family system. The client is only the messenger. The client comes with an issue, but behind the client is the family system pushing him to the family constellation, saying, look at it, look at your issue, and then you can heal an old family wound in our family. Yeah, and that's what they really want. Because the issue the client is coming with is practically the symptom, and the cause is an entanglement in the family system. This is why we are not there for the client. That's also different to a traditional psychotherapy. We are there for the family system. We always look at what's best for the system. Therefore, being part of the family system, being positioned at the bottom of the system, we are next to the client, but our position is where we can see the whole system, not only the client. When you are in the right position of the helper and you have this trust in the morphogenetic field to guide you step by step, and you are following the steps that the morphogenetic field guides you to correctly, yeah, all you need to do to facilitate is to connect with your knowledge that you gained in this course and your experience that you will gain later on, right? It's like the toolbox of the plumber again. The plumber comes with all the tools in the box, but he might just need one spanner to do the job. Same with you. Yeah. How does he know he needs that spanner and not another one? Right? Because he learned it and he has experience that that's the right thing to do. That's the same here. Yeah, it's not different. What is probably the most difficult challenge for the helper to swallow, or the pill to swallow, is that the right position of the helper is if they want to achieve nothing. So yeah, that needs to settle in a little bit, because you think, why, when I'm a helper, I want to help. So I want to achieve something. But if you really look closely what you are saying or thinking there is, what is the achievement that you want as a helper? Do you want to achieve happiness for your client? Do you want to achieve health for your client? Do you want to achieve any of those things? And the answer is no, because you don't know what is best for the family system. Because you are there for the family system. You don't even know whether it would be good for the client to be happy. Some may lose grounds because they used to be unhappy all their life. And they cannot handle happiness at all. So we have to restrain ourselves and do not think for the client what would be best for them, like a mother does for their children, yeah? We need to be honest and say, we don't know what's best for the client, yeah? And we actually don't care, because we are guided by the morphogenetic field into their family system to heal and address whatever needs healing there. And once that healing has taken place, it has a ripple effect through the generations towards the client. And whatever the outcome is for the client, whatever it is good, is what, is that what is there for the client. And we cannot predict what it is. We are not there to make the clients happy, right? We are there to solve the family issue on a deep soul level. And rest assured, it always has a positive effect on the client. Yeah, there is no negative effect, if you will, but it might not be what the client is expecting. So you cannot work with the expectations of your client, no? And that is the meaning behind you do not want to achieve anything if you're in the right position of the helper. You are there to help in any way, shape, or form the family system wants you to. And that is the next step, is you have no desire to help, neither. So this deep urge to help others, pull that back to help yourself. You need the help if you have this deep desire to help. And you see that often with people who are very selfless, and they give and give, and they do, and they volunteer here, and they do this and that, and they cannot stop doing things for other people. They're in a deep lack of giving the attention to themselves. Yeah. And you might see that even in your environment. Sometimes it's really obvious that they are lacking this centeredness, that pulling the resources in. And first you have to be whole, and then you can act from there. And when you act from there, you don't have the desire to help because you're not desiring. You do it anyhow because you can, and you are asked to do, because this is the sign that you are ready. There is this beautiful saying, I'm pretty sure it's from Zen teaching, from Zen Buddhism, saying, when the teacher is ready, the students appear, right? When the facilitator is ready, the clients will appear. And only the clients will appear whom you can give what you have. So you never need to worry a client comes to you that you cannot handle. Because if you are guided, guess what? If you're guided by the morphogenetic field, the morphogenetic field will send a family member only to that facilitator who can give them exactly what they need. Yeah? So there is no pressure here to achieve anything, and there is no worry to not be good enough. If you're following the teachings of Bert Hellinger, if you're following to connect with the morphogenetic field and work with the morphogenetic field, you do not need to fear, and you do not need to desire neither. Okay? So what is super important is to be connected to the morphogenetic field is waiting and silence. If we are super busy in our minds, in our heads, in our body language with talking or whatnot, we cannot connect to the morphogenetic field. To establish the connection, we need to be silent. And we need to be able to be comfortable, silent, and wait. Bert Hellinger was really a master in sitting next to the client for minutes, sometimes for 20 minutes, and not saying anything, not even looking at the client. And the client wasn't talking neither. He wouldn't allow them to talk. Just sitting patiently, waiting for the information from the morphogenetic field. Of course, I don't expect, and I probably won't sustain 20 minutes neither, but you start with a few tens of seconds, and then, you know, you go into the realm of 1 to 3 minutes. Has a very strong influence on the quality of your facilitating, if you don't rush it. And we talk about what we do with talkative clients in a few minutes, anyhow. To get to this place, both facilitator and the client, to be able to have the space to practice waiting in silence, to receive the information from the morphogenetic field. And we will make an exercise today to do that. Therefore, we also don't try to do anything. We are not, as a facilitator, we are not doing anything. We are connecting to the morphogenetic field, and when it's time to act, you know, we will, with the methods that you know, the gestures, the words, we will then suggest to the representatives what to do. The representatives are the ones who are doing something. We are not doing something. So that's another important position of the helper. We are not in the position of the ones who do everything. Yeah. The doing is by the representative. It is very helpful when you are in the position of the helper to empty yourself from everything you think you know. Because when you're in your mind, you intend to try to plan the constellation. You think you have a picture and you want to go somewhere and you want the representatives to act like this, so it fits into your plan. So there are two possibilities. A, they do what you plan to do, because you know how that is. We know that from quantum physics, expectations are the strongest pull to create reality. So if we expect them to act in a certain way, guess what? We will most likely experiencing them doing that, but we don't know whether that was a morphogenetic field or us who gave them the idea to do it, right? Or, so that's one thing. Or we are expecting nothing. We are expecting nothing. We sit there, we pretend we know nothing, waiting silently and patiently for the information of the morphogenetic field to come through. Yeah. It's like, you know, this little, what is this in English? This little saying, with a glass of water. If the glass of water is full, you can't add anything. It will overflow, right? So imagine your knowledge as a facilitator is a full glass and you want to resource to it. The morphogenetic field cannot put anything more in there. Yeah. So you need to make sure you empty your glass when you start a facilitation, a family constellation, and wait for the information from the morphogenetic field. You will resort to your knowledge further down in the constellation. Yeah. But when you put yourself at the beginning of a family constellation in the position of the helper, that's where you practice not to know anything. So that also means, and that is also brings you in the position that you are waiting for the first step only. Because when you think you know everything, then you have already the next 10 steps in your head. That means you want to control the constellation, but that's not the work we do. We are taking from the information from one step for the next. That's what we do. There is a book, I think it comes later, that I can highly recommend, The Art of Not Knowing, that I found very enlightening on this topic. If the helper finds himself in an awkward position, yeah, well, for whatever reason, ask your teachers, ask your spiritual guides for support, silently, obviously, right? They want to be asked. They would never come unasked, yeah, because that would be an overreach. But you can ask. So remember, if you find yourself in an uncomfortable spot, take a breath silently and ask your teacher or your spiritual guides to support you and let them guide you to the next step. Yeah, that's the book of Not Knowing by Peter Ralston. There's an Audible available on that book. If you're interested in this topic, it's a wonderful book to listen to, even when you're driving and commuting to work or driving from France to England. Must be a long drive. So, all right, anything to this topic before we go in detail to the client? So that was the position of the helper. All good so far? Okay. Now we look at the client. First, so how do we work with the client and how do we lead the client? First of all, you have to extend an invitation to the client to constellate. Because even if the client comes to a workshop, or like all other participants with the intent to constellate, they sit there and it can change. They might don't want anymore. And that has to be respected, in my opinion. So I would always ask them, do you want to constellate? Bert Helling, and you might see that in some videos. I'm not quite sure if that's in any video, but in live events, you clearly see that. He didn't ask people to raise their hands, right? And he had sometimes 200 people, 300 people in the room. He was just looking around and says, you. And then somebody did this and was shocked, no? And then they came. So that was most of the time how he, guided through the morphogenetic field, picked the ones who got to constellate. Of course, they had a choice, but nobody dared to say no. And he never really asked. And I think that's beautiful, and you need to be very confident to do that. But not everybody is Bert Helling, obviously. So I personally like to extend an invitation to the clients to constellate. In a workshop, I would ask them to raise their hands when they intend to constellate. And I would ask this question every time I start a constellation, not at the beginning of the workshop, because it changes all the time. One who didn't want to constellate after 3 constellations wants to constellate. Somebody who wanted to what was the other way around? Somebody who didn't want to who wanted to constellate after 3 or 4 constellations doesn't want anymore. Because something happened, they have resonated as a representative deeply, something is working, and they feel full and fulfilled, and they don't feel in need of to constellate. So it changes after every constellation. So therefore, always send an invitation to constellate. This is also, you might find that a lot, or actually a lot of facilitators divide their participants into 2 groups. One group has if you will, a preferred seat, and the other group is lesser. and then the one group with the preferred seat, they pay more than the others. And the ones they paid more, they had a discussion with the facilitator before that they want to have a guaranteed constellation. And that is where they pay for, right? And so the others who don't pay, who pay less, they are only representing, they don't get to constellate, yeah? Okay. And I just to tell you right away, Bert Hellinger never did that. And he actually advised the trainees to never do that, because you are not going with the field, with the morphogenetic field if you do that, right? However, I know many, many facilitators, you can see them online, you hear from them, they are doing exactly that, yeah? They want to schedule their workshops. They say, okay, they are probably insecure. I don't know why they do it. They think, okay, I can only have 5 constellations a day, so I can only give 5 people, you know, the chance to constellate, and I don't want to disappoint anybody who comes with a wish to constellate, and therefore I decide up front who gets to constellate or not. I understand the motive behind it. However, be aware, doing this, meaning not working with a morphogenetic field, because the morphogenetic field is deciding who gets to constellate out of everyone who came. And it's also not in the orders of love to have a divided group, you know, where one is better than the other. And then the third problem is that the representatives who come to only represent, they probably stand in a constellation and a huge topic comes up that they need to constellate. Yeah. And then you can't do that. You have to send them home. Right. So you are restricting yourself so much to an extent with this choice already that you are not in the orders of working with the orders of love anymore. And when you don't do that, you are not working with the method of Bert Hellinger. And when you don't do that, in my opinion, you don't even do a family constellation anymore, right? Yes, Lisha.
Yeah, I think this is what happened with the in-person workshop I attended.
Ah, yeah. Tell me.
So basically, that you have to pay much more to constellate as a client than the regular participant.
Yeah.
And I felt like that dynamic you were talking about, just when there was one person talking about something, I really felt the urge for me to constellate, but then I didn't pay for the client, so I couldn't.
Very good. Excellent, excellent. Thank you for bringing that in, experience in, because that's exactly how it is. I have never seen it work. Right. So I urge you to stand up to this demand. You will have that once in a while. I do still have that once in a while. And I always say the same that I tell you. I understand that there's an urge to control the workshop before it even started, but that is not in the best interest of your family system. No. So that's kind of the wording I use. So coming back to the invitation to constellate, and I can guarantee you, and that's the other good news is, nobody really leaves the constellation unfulfilled. The workshop, the whole day workshop, or the virtual workshop. Very, very, very rarely, I had the comment, actually just once, that I can remember now. I had a participant of a workshop commenting they are disappointed. Now, guess what the workshop was for them? It was very effective, because this disappointment comes up. Yeah. That is a very important step. Wherever they take, they will go somewhere else. They probably never do a family constellation again, but they will have taken this step to reveal their true topic, expectation, disappointment, and they will work through it if they want to, or they drop it if they don't want to. Yeah. So the constellation works in any ways. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you do. If you go with the field, you can always trust that everyone gets exactly what they need for their family system, right? Very important. to be that. This is why this trust is the first and foremost credo that we have. That's what we go with this trust in the morphogenetic field. We also trust the morphogenetic field to not bring the people to the workshop who would be not in the right place at the right time. You will have that when you're scheduling a workshop, people won't show. They cancel last minute. They have an accident on the way to the workshop. Or the kid gets ill and they can't get out of the house. All sorts can happen. And this is also, and we talk about that later, when Bert Hellinger said, everybody has to pay up front, yeah, and no money gets back because people don't show, because that is already their constellation, that they don't allow themselves to work on the issue, although everything was laid out in front of them to do so. They had the intent, they had the support of the family system, and then they pulled back, yeah, if you will. Like, they allowed the circumstances in their life so they can't attend. So that was a very, very important and strong message from Bert Hellinger as well in his courses, to make sure nobody pays after the event, always before. Yeah. So let's come back to the client and leading the client. Where does the client sit? Now, I'm curious to hear, Michelle, where did the client sit in your
in that workshop that the client sits next to the facilitator?
And on what side?
On the right.
So there was a facilitator on the left side, and on the right side was the client.
Well, if I look at them, you know.
No, look from the facilitator. Look from the facilitator.
The facilitator is sitting on her right hand side.
On her right side. Well, that's correct. You want the client to sit on your right hand side as a facilitator, because you are there to serve the client. So the client comes first. Everybody who comes first is on the right side. This is why in a family system, we place the man to the right side of the woman. Yeah. Just in the orders, we see that is the right way to place him. That doesn't mean the man is more important than the woman. That just means that they are the ones who are securing the family. And then we have the client on the right side as well, to focus on the client and make sure we are not in the focus. I give you a little example for that. And when you watch Bert Hellinger videos, I guarantee you, whatever you watch, the client's always on the right side. He would never, and there's nothing random about it. That's how it is, right? I had, it wasn't a training from Family Constellation Virtual. I know somebody who has been trained somewhere in South America. And he started to practice facilitating. And I know people who went to him this is why I know of the story. He had this first practice workshop with 4 people. He had 4 people together. And he was placing the client to work with on his left side. Then somebody I know who was attending the workshop and who was on the training asked him, why does he do that, right? Because clearly that's wrong. Right? And he thought about it, and he had the first constellation, and he had this guy or the girl on the left side. And then he said to her, no, that feels right. That feels right to me. Right? So he didn't want to change it. Now, the interesting part is coming, because my friend who was, part of this thing asked me, what do you say about that? And I said, well, who was the most important person in this room then? Huh? It was him. And he felt right about it. And that's correct. because it was all about him practicing facilitating. Yeah, this is why it felt right to him. It was about him, not about the client. Yeah, and this is so good to have this feedback. That is the way it is experienced. I can tell you the second or the third time around, they have their little practice group. He decided the client sits on the right side, because it all of a sudden felt better when the client was on the, now it was not all about him. Now finally it was about the client. Yeah. So it is really accurate, the information you get from the field. And if you set up your first workshop and you have the feeling you better sit on the right, that's totally fine, because it's a practice workshop for you. And it's okay to be in the focus. Yeah. But then don't hold on to it. You must step out of this role of being the one that it's about in the workshop and step in the role of the helper. And the helper is sitting on the left and the client on the right. Of course, virtually you don't see that, and that's not important. And I always, when I'm facilitating virtual workshop, I visualize the client on my on my right side. Now, and it's easy to do because I had done a lot in-person workshops, so that's natural to me. So, and I also urge you, and we talk about that also today, to start, when you start practicing, do that definitely in person. Don't try to do that online, and get friends and family together, a small group, that it's about you practicing. It's about you practice, not about them. Yeah, it's really, really, really important that you give yourself the room and the space, and you gather the help of your whānau. That's Maori for the extended family, to help you to gain this experience. So, in order to lead the client, first you need to be connected with the morphogenetic field, right? Because otherwise you don't know what the client needs, only when you're connected. So therefore you need to sit in silent next to your client. The silent period can be very short or can be extremely long. Yeah, but there is always this moment of silence. So you're not rushing, you said the client, yeah, come sit to me, and the client has not even sit really, then you said to him, so what is it? What are we looking at? You know, that doesn't give yourself and the field the moment to connect and get an information. So they sit down, they settle in, they will be nervous, and you will just breathe a little bit and wait for a few seconds or even a few minutes what you receive in information. I'll give you another example. This is the fun part of the course because I have so many practical examples to share with you. There was not even a workshop. There was a talk, a free talk where we had probably, I don't know, in a town in New Zealand, a small town, 35 people together. So most of the people had no idea of family constellation. And then I said, okay, we talked enough. Let's look at it in practice. Is somebody here who wants to sit on the chair and look at an issue so I can demonstrate how that looks like? So a woman came, an elderly woman came, sit right to me in the chair, and she was sitting there. And then I asked her after a few seconds, what is it about you want to share? And she said, I really don't know. I was just curious to sit here. And I said, okay, fine. I'm not sending her away and ask somebody else. I say, oh, well, that's meant to be, so fine. So I was sitting there and connecting with the field, and it took a while, definitely a few minutes, maybe even 5 minutes. And then I had this heat coming up. And then I asked her, what about the fire? And then she was breaking in tears and said, oh my gosh, all my life, I am afraid I'm burning to death. So that was the information from the morphogenetic field I received after patiently waiting and not getting nervous because I didn't receive anything before. And then just putting that out there started the constellation. It became a really powerful constellation and was way beyond any kind of demonstration, right? So this is just an example how you connect with the field. You just wait for info, and every information you get. I could also thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting hot flashes now, you know, hormonal hot flashes. No, I didn't think that, because everything. And then I have another funny example here. Even if somebody farts next to you, right? It is an information from the field, right? So everything, whatever happens, the trust in the field is first and foremost that is your expertise. That's what you gain. That's what you need to work with. That's all you need, really, with all the knowledge in your toolbox to facilitate in the method of Bert Hellinger family constellation. Bert Hellinger always said, in German, of course, this is translated, stay empty and collected. It does sound a little bit strange in English, but that's exactly what he says in German, yeah? So stay empty and collected. That's how he expressed how it feels to be in this space to connect with the morphogenetic field. And then when you are in this staying empty and collected, you will get a feeling for the client. Something will come up, like this heat that came up, and other things in other constellations. Then we have always the big decision to make. Do we let our clients talk or not? And how much do we let them talk? Because some people really like to talk when they're in the hot chair. Either they are nervous, or they really find the issue is so important they need to explain it to you, because otherwise you won't get it, or they just have the habit of talking a lot. Yeah. Now the question is, do you need that for your work as a facilitator? Do you need them talking? And the clear answer is not really. Because you really want to connect with the morphogenetic field of the family system, and they will get you the information that you work with. However, the family system can also work through the client. So the client can say something valuable that is like the voice of the family system coming through them. So the decision how much you want to let the client talk is up to you. Just a word of warning, too much talking is never good, because they want to manipulate you and drag you into their mind world. And their mind world is not helping, because if it would, they would have helped themselves years ago, because they're always in there. But the truth is, it doesn't help at all what's in their mind. Yeah, we want to know what's in the family system. Now you need kind of practice to exert the information from what they are talking that is actually important for the constellation, and the family system is talking through them. Yeah. So definitely when you start to facilitate, when you start practicing with your friends and family, let them talk, but not too much. When they start to rant, start to tell you histories, start to tell you whatever, stop them and say, I heard enough. Let's, start with the facilitation. You need to leading the client means that you take the initiative to say, stop here with the talking. Then when you have somebody, like I just said in this example with the woman at the fire who didn't talk at all, who had nothing to say, that's actually brilliant. You don't need to be nervous. You would be probably as a beginner be nervous. Oh, I got no information, but just empty yourself and trust that the field sent this person to you because you can handle it, because this constellation, this client will show you how you get in information from the morphogenetic field. And as I said, any thought that comes to you, any emotion, any movement is from the field. Do not doubt it. take it. Yeah, whatever it is. So that's all I can say to talking, really, without talking too much about it and spending too much. Oh, maybe I want to add that in the old family constellation, remember we here talk about the new family constellation that Bert Hellinger developed after the century, after the year 2000, and he calls it the new family constellation, or going with the spirit mind. Before that, there was what is now the old family constellation, which was the beginnings of family constellation from the 1980s to 20 years. And many facilitators have learned that, and probably still learn it from them who have learned then, who have never learned the new family constellation. And they require from the client to know their family history. And my first family constellation with a Hellinger trained facilitator was exactly like that. Before you come to a workshop, you receive a template with 10 questions about your family. And you were required to research your family history and answer all these questions and bring it to the workshop. We don't do that. We are going with the spirit mind, meaning we're connecting with the morphogenetic field and allow the morphogenetic field to tell us from the family system exactly what is needed right now, right here. And not interested in family history. It brings us into the history, but right to the point where we need to be for this issue to solve. In the old family constellation, you are practicing, every generation is represented, yeah? So you have representative for parents and siblings, and then representative for their parents, and then representative for their grandparents, and see how they act, how they move towards each other to find out where the imbalance is. And then you would just dismiss everybody who has no part in it again. As you can, if you get the picture, it's a very time-consuming to do that. You need a lot of participants to do that. And it's also, as a beginner facilitator, I think even more confusing to work with so many people, just to remember who they represent. Yeah. So it is totally achievable to learn from scratch the new family constellation like I did and work with the morphogenetic field alone and not with the information. And also the information that you gather from your family are not all accurate. There are lots of stories that families are traditionally passed on to the next generation who are not true. Yeah. So that's the other thing. It will guide, lead. If you, as a facilitator, would rely on it, you would probably be on a detour then, right? Makes it even longer. So when you're going out and you go to other family constellations, watch, are they using the new family constellation or are they using the method of the old family constellation? It doesn't say that the old family constellation is not effective. Of course it is. It just has these disadvantages of taking so much time and that you need to gather information as a client beforehand. And that you need more representatives, of course. Yeah. When you are talking to the client, you want to ask them questions to find out what the issue is. For example, in the case when they are talking about things and it doesn't resonate with you. Let's say they are going on and on about the mother and let's say the father, that he was never there and they barely know him and they never played with him football and whatever. Yeah. Normally, the one they are not talking about are the important person. And in this case, it would be the mother, right? And as a facilitator, you feel that. You feel where the power is. The power is not, if you just listen to what they say and let let them guide you, let them lead you, you are lost because they're taking you on a detour, on a sidetrack. But if you stay centered, connected to the field, and you are resonating with the field, then you will feel what is the person who is of importance here, and you will know it is the person they are deliberately not mentioning and who is obvious. So when they are talking about their childhood and all about the father, the mother is the one that they avoid to talk about. So that's one thing. So I'm just saying, if you have a conversation with your client, which you will have to find out what the issue is, then don't take what they say for granted and always look for the people that they are not mentioning. And then avoid suggestive questions, right? So for example, you would not ask your client, your father was never there, wasn't it? Yeah? Because with this kind of questioning, you are in your mind, you want them, you want the constellation to follow, let's say, an interrupted movement towards the father because you have in your mind that that's what the client needs. But that's probably not what the family system needs. So avoid suggestive questions at all costs. Avoid to think about that anyhow. Just ask them what they want, and if they start to rant about things, then you stop them, and then you listen to what they didn't say, and you listen to the morphogenetic field, what it tells you. To your clients, remember, you are neither an authority nor a friend. You're none of that. You're very neutral to your client. Even if you work with a friend, which you will when you start, because you need your friends to help you practicing facilitating, you forget about that's a friend. It's a client. So all the stories you have shared, all ups and downs, everything you know about them is not of relevance here. Just not relevant. And also, you're not an authority. You don't want them to look up to you. Because you're establishing a wrong hierarchy. Because the helper is at the side of the client. And the client is more important than the helper. So it's not about the helper. You don't want them to look up to you. So you don't want to establish with your gestures, with the words you're using, a kind of an authoritarian relationship with your client. However, you want to lead them, of course, right? So if you say, I heard enough, stop talking, let's constellate, it means you're an authority. It means you're a facilitator. I want to start working, yeah? So that's of course a different swing on it. When you have a difficult client, like difficult in any way, shape, or form, that always happens. Somebody who becomes a little bit obstinate towards you, a little bit nasty, who's a bit resistant, who tries to challenge you, who's starting to ask you questions. There are lots of ways a client can be difficult. My trick is I imagine them as a child. I look at the client and I see a 4-year-old who's throwing a tantrum, basically. Right? So it doesn't get me. I'm not leaving my leader role as a facilitator when I see them like that, right? And just by seeing them like this, they lose all their power because they have only power when they start to get you, when they get to you. If they don't, there is no power, and they will stop anyhow, and you can start working. If you feel that your client is resisting what you say or not trusting you, not trusting the field, yeah, talk to them about their expectations. And also think about your own expectations. What do they expect and what do you expect from the client? Yeah. Why would there be a resistance? Are they not here to get help? Right? Are you not ready to help them as a, as in helping their family system with family constellation, right? So get this from this feeling of resistance into the expectations, and then that will clear up normally. Because if you have a clear picture about your own expectations and their expectations, yeah, the resistance is kind of crumbling. The worst thing is if you feel there's resistance, yeah, that you let that get you and establish this kind of this kind of game that the client is playing with you, right? Because they take over the lead through that. And of course, they make you nervous. And when you are nervous, you don't have, the confidence to sit quiet and connect with the field, right? When you work with difficult clients, and we go through that also in the later on today, I think, remember the field, trust in the field, remember trust in the field, will only send you clients you can handle. You never need to fear you have a client that you cannot handle if you're working with the field, right? So therefore, if you have a difficult client and you feel there's something going on that is not beneficial for your work, yeah, accept that as something you can handle. And even if it means you send them back to their chair, take them on later, So what more do we have? Is that a question, Michelle?
Yeah, just want to clarify. You said the resistance in the client when you see that and ask for their kind of ask for what their expectations are. So isn't the resistance coming from expectation?
Exactly. This is why you want from this undefined feeling of resistance that makes you nervous into acknowledging what is. So you want to get out of this feeling things into, let's talk about your expectations. What do you expect from me?
So once they express that, do you guide them to kind of let go of the expectation?
Exactly. Exactly. You will guide them and say, okay, thank you for sharing. I understand that are your expectations, and you might feel they are not met here, and that's correct, because we can only work, and that's the beauty of this work, is if we drop our expectations. That's the core of the work with family constellation, because we are working for the family system. You are part of a system. This is a systemic work. So you say to the client, you are part of a system, and we are working for the system. And you come here because your system, family system, sent you here. And we use this method of Bert Hellinger to find out what nobody knows as of yet, what the reason is. So, everybody needs to drop their expectations, the client and the facilitator. And when you speak it out and clarify that, then they will totally let you work. They will relax. It's always this. Remember, the first step is always to a movement towards reconciliation is acknowledging what is. No, it's even when you talk to the client. Okay. So then we have the clients who have done many family constellations, and they have expectations because they think they know how this works. They might know it better than you. Right? So on one hand, it's excellent to work with clients who have great experience in family constellation. You don't need to explain anything to them, right? And they normally, it's also easy for them to resonate, and it's easy for them to talk about their issue. That's all good, yeah? But then if they have certain expectations towards you, then you can just bounce that back to them and say, you know, we are working here with the method of family constellation, so we have to drop our expectations. That is mine expectations and that's yours as well, right? It's really good to talk about that in any way, with difficult client or with experienced client. A way to lead the client is also to change the position of the client. So we have them sitting on the right side of the facilitator, right? You can ask the client to get up and choose another chair. Remember, in person constellation, people are standing up and representing, yeah? Sometimes the client is kind of glued to this hot chair, as we call it, the hot chair, and looks at the scene. He might only see backs because everybody is standing with a back to them. You as a facilitator would lead the client to change the seat. You would say, choose one of the empty seats that you can see the faces, that you can see what's going on. It's important that the client does see what's going on, even if he has a representative. He cannot just have a representative leave the room and say, okay, you do that for me. So for their own experience and for the way they are resonating with their family system, it is important that they stay present there. There is exemptions to that, but we talk about that later. We talk about that now because now it's absent clients. So yes, you can facilitate for clients who are not there. That is common. The seat stays empty. The right seat stays empty. However, you have discussed with the client before what the issue is, what they want to constellate, and there is a very strong reason that they cannot come. Let's say they're in a hospital, yeah? Or they're in another country. A really strong reason. Normally, you would expect every client to take any kind of reasonable effort to come to the event. Yeah, that's a step they need to take. It's already a movement towards healing when they do that. But if they can't do that, yes, you can constellate for a client who is absent with their, like when they wish to, and you know the issue already, you just leave the seat empty. Then no representative sits there for the client. Yeah, you leave the seat empty and you ask the representative to represent certain family members and you take it from there. Just a normal constellation, nothing different. You are allowed to experiment during the constellation. That's also part of leading the client. You don't need to know everything. Yeah. And sometimes you don't know what relationship you're looking at. And then you can experiment, for example, with using the 3 strong words and see which fits. Yes, please, or thank you. Because then when you found the one that feels true, then you know then you're much closer to understand what relationship you are looking at. No? Okay, we are at our break. Before we go in our break, and then we have an exercise after that. And let me stop sharing. Let's talk about what we have just discussed. I'm sure you have some questions or something you want to repeat or talk about. How do you feel about right now, thinking you have your first client that you should constellate for in a workshop setting? How does that feel? Tamara.
So from this, what we talked today, I feel peace because I know the field will do everything. I mean, you know, that's kind of good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Even more, I feel supported in that way because what I was thinking during this morning was, okay, just relax, everything will sit down, because there's so many now examples, and we cannot reach every example. It's just by doing it, probably integrating, So I just said to my inner self, like, it's okay, you don't need to remember all the principles, all the examples, all the what can show up. When it shows up, you will know what to do. So for me, that's very, it was like very chaotic suddenly, and then it cleared. So yeah, to trust the field. Thank you. So it's very important to stay in this, because it's not easy. Our mind wants to know, so
yeah, right.
for me,
That's wonderful, Tamara. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. David, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I just have the trust. I mean, I wouldn't put myself in the situation of trying to facilitate if I didn't feel that I was capable. And all the experiences I've had about the work that I do is that the universe provides the right person in front of me for me to be able to help them, and for them to be able to help me. So I'm very happy and comfortable with the notion of trusting the system. The thing that I would need to do a bit more work on for sure is to, have the basics really nailed down in my head before I went into the room, because I wouldn't feel that I know enough right now. But that's that's because I haven't put the work in so far. I haven't had the time, but I will. So
absolutely.
I'm feeling really confident.
Right. That's wonderful feedback, David. And you're absolutely right. I mean, you're just 3 months in the training, right? And that's like, obviously. So you cannot feel ready right now. That would be, I mean, you can, but I would be very surprised if somebody said in the 3rd module, I'm ready to facilitate. But if you take what you said, similar to what Tamara said, that you have already the experience, the life experience that the universe will provide what's needed. That's exactly the trust that you have in the morphogenetic field, that they will provide the information you need. Absolutely correct. Very good.
What's quite strange is when I'm sitting there, whenever I talk about the morphogenetic field, I've never thought about it in my life, but I have my grandmother just keeps coming to me. I'm going to have to do my constellation soon, I feel, because something needs to come out. It's almost like I can.
We will come to that. Is that the maternal or the paternal grandmother?
The paternal.
Interesting. Very good. So the way you are resonating, so when this comes, so as a facilitator, when you are sitting there, yeah, and your grandmother comes to mind, you don't need to be, oh, why am I thinking about my grandmother? This is an information of the field. You would ask them about their grandmother. Yeah. You have to trust that that is not you. Exactly the same that you trust when you are representing that what you are saying, doing, feeling is not you, is the one you're representing. Even if you think it's you, it's still the information from the field. Yeah. And I have another example for that if you want to. I can share that with you later. Yuko, how do you feel when you think about being in this position of the helper?
Same as everybody's. Trust just the moment, and whatever it comes, it's no doubt. It's just that's a sign, and I should use that, without any judgment. So yeah, then I reflect on what's going on with me. I think about something, I sense something. It's just me, thinking about too much, or concern. But actually, if I'm neutral, then that's the message, and then maybe I just take it without any emotions. So quite interesting to listen to this lecture.
Good. Right. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And Michelle, how about you?
Sorry.
Yuko, you can finish.
No, then I had a one-on-one session with you, And then, you know, it just came to me that in the last, the way I choose a figurine, I choose like a green figurine, but, you know, in my mind, I was looking at yellow, and then, you know, it makes sense. So, you know, that it's also like, but it's meant to be choose green figurine, but I was looking at yellow, that makes me feel good. And that how I can, what is double, I don't know, maybe that doesn't apply. You know, maybe. Do you understand what I'm saying?
You're talking about the trust, right?
Yeah, that's trust.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think whatever it happens, it's okay.
Exactly. Whatever figurine is on the board is the right one, even if you think then the other color would be better.
Yeah. Something like this.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, sorry.
Good. Michelle.
Yes. So I think it is indeed a really a paradigm shift in terms of how we you know, let the field do the work and trust and just be in a connected and a receptive kind of mode. The question is, you know, how, you know, when you're in that mode of receiving and you feel there's information, bodily sensation, how do you differentiate noise versus signal? You know, sometimes I get all kinds of sensations, but then is that real? Is that something really significant, or is just like noise? How do you?
That's a good question, Michelle. Because you're not in the position of the helper, you don't know how it feels, what you receive. Then, so what I'm always saying is, and I'm sure I have mentioned that before, I'm really, I really want you to think about what we are doing is you don't need intuition for. It's not an intuitive work. It's a scientific work. Yeah. You learn it. You don't need to have a specific intuition like psychics have or any of these skills, if you will. It's not needed for this work. It is even probably not even dangerous, but definitely not beneficial to have it, because you might come in these problems that you don't know what you're feeling. Is it from the field or is it an intuition you get, right? Intuition is random. You sit in the bus and you receive all kinds of signals and, you know, emotions and things like that, no? And you don't ask for it, and you don't know what to do with it neither. As a facilitator, you ask for it and you know exactly what to do with it, right? That's the difference.
That's interesting, because I thought before, until you mentioned it, I thought there are similar things. Yeah, I would like to know that the clear distinction between, you know, what is this connection versus the intuition.
Yeah, that's exactly what you have to practice to understand it, and that's exactly what you do when you are in this position of the helper. To practice that. So intuition is not necessary. It's almost a hindrance in this work. We are working with information, clear that we ask for, clearly intended information. Yeah.
How do you ask?
Because you are putting yourself in the position as a helper. It's not a ritual. It's not a ritual. It's not a specific phrase or anything. It's you're putting yourself as in the quote from Bert Hellinger, you're putting yourself in the position as a helper next to the client, serving the family system, no? Knowing that you know it all, knowing that you only get the cases that you can handle, yeah, for your level of experience, waiting for the one information you need to start with. Could be the grandmother, like David just said. Could be the fire, like in my example. And I give you another example that was also very telling, actually in the same event, or a similar event, probably not the same, but a similar event. I asked a representative, a male representative, to represent somebody. And he was very awkward. Obviously, he didn't come on his own terms. His partner dragged him there. So he was very awkward. He was like, oh, no. I said, yeah, I mean, you always trust the field. So he was standing there, and he was standing there looking around and feeling very awkward. And then I asked him, how do you feel? That's what you do. And then he said, I feel nothing. And he was so ashamed. He said, I'm so sorry, but I feel nothing. Now, if you wouldn't be experienced enough and trust enough the field, you would say, oh, well, sit down, then I take somebody else, right? No, of course not. I said, that's fine. Great. I said, you stay here. You are representing whatever it was. Then I asked somebody else to come in to represent, also men. And he said exactly the same thing. But he wasn't shy. He said, I feel nothing either. See the pattern? I had 5 people, 5 men putting up. They all felt nothing. And then the 6th was a woman, client, representative of the client. And then, movements of the soul, some words being said. And all of a sudden, the 5th guy started to say, I really feel sad. And then that was it. So then we have, whatever we did there, maybe an interrupted movement, I don't remember. And then you could turn to the other one, and the other one looked at him and he was crying. Tears were running. So this rippled through all to this first guy, who was actually by that time on his knees in tears. A super release of energies, grieving in this case was it, and fear, and was the opposite of feeling nothing. Then when we concluded the constellation, I had the chance to explain to everybody that everyone is connected to the field, if they want or not want, and what they feel is the information we get from the field. And this was an information that was from utmost importance to be cut off of emotion. That was the wound in the family soul, to be completely cut off emotion, 5 generations of men. Perfect, a perfect constellation. So that's the amount of trust that you bring to the table as a facilitator, right? Okay. Awesome. So we have a break. We meet in 10 minutes, and then we have an exercise. So I see you in 10.
Not usually. I always forget these things.
Right. So the exercise is leading the client. One is a client, one is themselves as in the role of the helper. Now, you start with connecting with the client and their family system by waiting and staying in silence. And you take a minute or 2 to do that. Time it if need to. Don't look them permanently in the eyes. You can look at your client, but don't stare at them. You also don't close your eyes. You don't want to go in yourself. You want to stay connected, but you might just, look down or look somewhere on the screen. Then sometimes you can, go over the screen, look at your client, and, I just don't want you to stare at your client. That's the message here, yeah. And I don't want you to close the eyes neither. And then after a minute or 2, you observe yourself, of course, if something is coming up. And the one who is the client also observed what's going on in them, yeah? What's going on in them? Is there something coming up? Is there an issue coming up? Is there something, a sensation, a memory, a person, anything coming up? And then after this, you have set waiting in silence. You ask your client what it is about, what is their issue, what they want to constellate. And then you listen to your client, what they say. And then you, first of all, decide whether this is something you have picked up already, so a confirmation, or whether that's something completely different, or may you have not picked up anything. Yeah. So you let them talk, and then you decide how much you let them talk. Where is the right point to stop them? Where do you feel you have enough information for the first step only? Where do you have the information to know which are the two representatives you want to start with? That's what you're looking for. That's the first step, yeah? The client and somebody else, or two from their family system, whatever. That's what you want to start. So you need enough information, either from the morphogenetic field while you were in silence, or from what your client is saying, to be able to choose two representatives to start the constellation. The next step is that you decide which two representatives you want to choose, yeah? And that's when the exercise ends. You are not constellating for your client, yeah? You choose where to start. That's all you do. Understood? Yeah? And then, of course, we swap. So I give you each, for this exercise, I give you each 6 minutes, maybe even 10. Now, you don't need to talk so much. That's 2 minutes to sit in silence, 4 minutes talking, 7 minutes. I give you 7 minutes. After 7 minutes, we swap. Yeah? And if you have, within the 7 minutes, not stopped your client from talking yet, you have to do that quickly. Decide quickly which two family members you want to represent, and then swap. Yeah? And write it down if you have to. I mean, or just memorize it. Cool. All right. Now I start. So. Okay, wonderful. Cool. So who was in a group together?
David and I were together.
You would like to start, Michelle? David? Sharing?
Sure. So I started out as the facilitator and David was the client. While I was in the silent, mode, there was no particular any sensation or imagery or impression or anything that came through. I just felt, something kind of in my chest area, a little bit heavy. So the issue, after he started talking about issue about his twin sister, it's an issue about the sister's problem with leg pain. And then he talked about how his mother used to be troubled with similar problems. And so he's trying to find find ways to help her heal. And so two things, while he was talking, obviously there are two people, his sister and his mother, but I keeps on feeling there is a third person. Like the sister is on this side, the mother is to the right of the sister, and then there is this third person kind of in the shadow behind the mother. So we don't, so you asked us to bring in two, but I almost wanted to really ask you.
Minimum of two.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the third one, I don't know who, and David said he couldn't really, immediately there was nobody really came to mind.
Mhm.
So probably just bring someone like an unknown. I don't know
Yeah.
how you
Definitely.
label that.
You always go with that. That's an information from the field, 100%. So exactly what you suggest in a family constellation, you would put 3 representatives up. Well, we have to talk about first order of love, who belongs to the family, who David can help with, because obviously David is a client, right? Not his sister. So that's another.
That's another thing.
That's another thing.
Well,
right?
so the thing is, when he's talking about that, it didn't occur to me that he can or cannot represent or constellate for his sister.
Okay, so let's dial back to the first module. When you as a facilitator work with the orders of love, and you would only constellate with the people who belong to the family system due to the first order of love. You always take the client as the first generation, which is David, and then you can work with who belongs from his generation, yeah, and go backwards 7 generations. And as you know from module 1, who particularly belongs or not belongs. So his sister, obviously his sister belongs to the family system, no? His mother belongs to the family system, and the third person would belong as well. Otherwise, it wouldn't show up. However, the client is David, so he has an issue. If he said, I want to constellate for my sister and put my sister in the seat, although she's not there, of the client, she has a different family system. She has different partners, different former, it's a different system. And she's entangled with different people who, who are not part of David's system. So this is why when somebody's talking, helping somebody else, there are 2 ways to look at it. The first way is, and that's what I prefer to do, I only look at the client. The client is here, the client is what I work with. If they want to help somebody else, they have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking at, because why would they help somebody else first before they help themselves? So that's the first thing, right? Of course, I wasn't part of the conversation, but that's when you're interviewing a client, that's really good. We talk about that again. The first picture comes to mind: who's a client, who belongs to the family system, when you decide who you ask to represent. So the sister in this case can be represented, the mother can be the third person, but only as a sister of David, not as the one who has an issue.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, that's something that it didn't occur to me in the beginning. I was kind of imagining David is sitting on my right side. And it felt very natural that he just starts, maybe because he said twin sister. It's almost like they're one.
Almost like one, yeah.
But then, I guess there is part of the interview he needs to kind of focus on then what is the issue.
Yeah. And therefore, Michelle and everybody else, it is very important that you always choose a representative for the client as well. Always. So you don't lose sight of for whom you're constellating.
Yeah.
And then you see, when you do, you would have 4 people to start with. You have David's representative, you would have his sister's representative, his mother's representative, and the other person you saw. You would have 4 to start with, and you would focus where's the strongest energy, who's looking at whom, who's relating to whom, no? Who's looking down, who's looking away, where's the strongest energy? And then you would look at the representative of David, how they are reacting to this, to see what is the issue. Because David has not revealed the issue yet. He was only talking about the issues of others, when I understand you correctly.
Yeah.
If David as a client would say, I don't want to constellate, I want to constellate for my sister, then you have to say you can't do that. You cannot constellate for your sister, you cannot constellate for your mother, you can only constellate for your own children. dependent children, as is, no, right? Well, very good example. So you know that that's how you set up the scene, the family constellation. That's the first steps. Very good. Okay, let's swap roles. David, first of all, David, how did you feel when you were the client about connecting with your facilitator, and was there anything going on?
I think I was more absorbed in the issue than the connection at that moment, because as has been highlighted here, I wasn't sure if I could bring that to the constellation. I want to, but I wasn't sure. And I actually did raise that with Michelle, saying, I'm not sure if we can do this, if I brought the right issue here, because, you know, it just seems that my life seems to flow so beautifully, whereas my sister's doesn't. We're twins. It just seems like unfair that I've had such a brilliant life and she hasn't, you know, and a lot of things seem to fall to her rather than to me.
What do you hear, Michelle, when he's now talking? What am I hearing when he's talking? What is his issue?
Guilt.
Yeah, guilt, exactly. And you're right there. So this talking about the sister and the mother is a detour. Maybe the shadow you saw is the guilt, and it's very often how they appear.
So it's not a person.
It's always a person. That will be a person that is in the ancestral line of David's family system, somebody who has set off this feeling of guilt, who has done something to feel guilty about.
Yeah, because when he mentioned his mother, I didn't feel that mother was very relevant.
Good.
It was this thing behind.
Good. 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 So see, the exercise was to show you the first step. Yeah? That you know where to start. Right? Now we have learned that it is the start is to determine who is the client. And let always a representative for the client. And maybe in your inquiry with the client, don't let them lead you with a story. That's what I call a story. Yeah, about the sister and the mother. That's the storyline. But you as a facilitator, you want to dig deeper. So if you would ask yourself, okay, hang on, who's the client here? David. You would ask him, so what does it make you feel, like I just did? And then his issue would come up, the feeling of guilt, this underlying, probably completely subconscious. Who knows? Feeling of guilt, no? Very good. Okay, let's swap roles. David, you are the facilitator.
Okay, so in my kind of, you know, trying to connect to the morphogeneric field, I had this very strong vision of an older man with grey hair, just, and he had a moustache. I don't know why, but the moustache was the thing that I saw. It was just odd, and that the whole thing felt very male. And then Michelle explained her issue about her son, and you know, how he was saying sorry a lot about his schooling, and I just had this. The two people immediately came to me were a father and a paternal grandfather, and it was definitely paternal. I didn't have any, there was no female stuff in this at all. Just felt a very male orientated issue. And it could even have been further back. I maybe felt that it was further beyond something that was coming down from a distance. And then we kind of, because we agreed that we were going to get 2 people, and then Michelle started talking about an issue, maybe that was the son reacting to this, something, you know, for the sister, and I just couldn't see any female content in the issue at all. It just seemed very male. I don't know why it was an overriding. This is to do with men. That was kind of what was sitting with me.
Great, awesome. And what did you decide? Who do you want to?
It was the father and the paternal grandfather, and then I there may have been somebody beyond, but I wasn't absolutely sure about that. So we stuck at the 2.
Excellent. So in your constellation, who is the client?
The son.
Yeah, it's the son. So he is the first generation. So if you would want a representative for Michelle, who is sitting on your side, who thought is the client, she would be the 2nd generation. Right?
You know, it's interesting, isn't it? Is that I in my mind I was fixing the son then. I mean, Michelle, that's bizarre that I'd gone to the son who had the issue, and of course it wasn't. It was Michelle, because she's worrying about her son. So
that is possible, but the way you explained the that's possible. And sometimes we work with the mothers or the fathers because that is the issue. But it is absolutely correct to constellate for the son. It's a dependent son. He has an issue. It's absolutely legitimate to do that. And you would do that because you would take the information you got from the morphogenetic field that has to do with males, literally. Yeah? So you got 2 information, and that's enough. Always go with synchronicity. You got 2 information from the morphogenetic field. First of all, you see the grandfather, the male, and secondly, Michelle is worried for her son. That's it. That's all you need. And it's completely correct. Of course, you need your son then later in the constellation as well as a client. Yeah. But you don't need to start with them. You can start in the new family constellation. You can go right to the issue, which possibly was the grandfather. Huh?
But
in
then,
this case, am I?
Sorry, Michelle.
In this case, am I gonna be part of the initial constellation?
Not necessarily. No.
Okay.
At the moment, I don't see a reason.
So I would have put the sun to my right.
Michelle is like a surrogate for the sun.
Right.
So she is on your right, but you are not looking at her as a client. You are looking at her as a surrogate for the sun.
Okay.
So you would ask somebody, not the mother. I would not ask the mother to represent the child. I would ask another participant of the room to represent the child as a client. And you're completely right. There is like, I don't know, half the time the mothers come with a worry about the child, but in fact, we are working with the worries of the mother because that is the stronger energy. And the other half of the time, it's really about the child and the child needs help. And the family system is sending the mother to help with the child's issue to go all the way back to heal a family wound that the mother is not directly entangled with. Because in this case, it is a male issue. Yeah? Isn't that wonderful? It's magic, I think. It's absolutely magic. So very good observed, right decision, all good, David, very good. How did it feel when you saw this old man? And did you question yourself, am I making this shit up, or is this what was going on in your mind?
Well, no, because I do quite a lot of work in my coaching and counseling, and I'm just very used just to taking what comes. So I cleared my mind down, and I accept the gift, if it is a gift, just to be able to see something like that.
Good.
So it's just whatever comes, it will be what it will be.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Excellent. And look how what the magic is from the field is that you are the only male in the group, and you are chosen in this exercise, which is always also a constellation, to be the one to discover this male issue, which has also to do with you, because every time we are happy enough to facilitate for somebody else, something is in there for us as well. At the beginning, it's big things, and then, of course, as more you work, as smaller and smaller, but there's still an tiny, itsy bitsy thing, a new experience, a new information, something that you as a facilitator get from it, you know, from the work with the client. Very good. Did we not talk before that your grandmother paternal line came up in your vision?
No, that was earlier. That was
Yeah. I mean that was paternal line, wasn't it?
No, that's paternal line.
Yeah. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
yeah.
Just clarify something. So for my sister, I would need to bring her to a constellation for her to be present.
If she, yeah, definitely. If she wants to look, it's not your position. Look, we are all worried about our family members, yeah? But we have to accept that they all, even if they are twins, they all follow their own soul journey. And whatever they experience, and it might be very dramatic, is there for a reason. And we cannot take that away from them. Yeah? Not through our worries, not through the attempt to help. It's impossible. It's their soul journey. We can be there when they need us. Yes. But it's a difficult position to be in, but that's what we need to practice. We need to be asked for help when we want to help. That's the right position for the helper. You cannot just help somebody. Neither your sister who's close to you nor a random person on the street where you can clearly see that they have an issue. Right? They need to come to you. Very, very, very important. Other than your own children, of course. If you have dependent children, that's a different story. But everybody else needs to come to you. So if your sister, if she knows that you are on the training and that you are ready to practice facilitating family constellation, when she knows that, and she said, hey, do you think you can help me with, what was this, my leg? Something?
Yeah.
Hey, do you think family constellation can help me with my leg? Then you can say, sure does. If you will, I try. No? And then you would be the facilitator and she would be the client. Right? You have to wait for this moment when they come. Right. Okay. Yuko and Tamara.
So first Yuko was client.
Mm-hmm.
And in the silence part, nothing was really present in the first minute. And then I started to feel some isolation, like something is isolated from something, you know, like something like that. And then I felt it's time to ask Yuko what she wants to constellate, because somehow in the beginning was flat, and then the energy started to raise. So then I felt more confident that the field is there. And
yeah,
then,
very good observation. Yeah.
Yeah, somehow, yeah, it was very interesting for me because I was ready to wait, but then I couldn't wait anymore. You know, it came so much. So then I was observing that. Okay, so shortly, Yuko was explaining how she feels. She shared things about trust, and I heard the big need from her to explain why she feels like that in a way of like you know, like she accepts the feeling, but she actually doesn't, you know. So she was very, it was interesting to see how we are, I don't know what the English word, how we are defending how we feel, you know.
Okay.
And then I was thinking about then on nothing was coming to my mind except the trust, because somehow I immediately knew if I put trust, there will be a person behind and it will show. But then it came like, maybe it's a father, but then he vanished, you know, and suddenly the mother came, and the whole, I saw the whole scene, you know, of actually birth, you know. And then I didn't say anything to Yuko until now. I didn't even wanted to share there. I said I will share here because, you know, it was so strong. And then I saw the hands of the dog. You know, this was distrust that probably something went wrong, but this is all then my mind. So I didn't put all this. I said to her, okay, let's put you in the space as a client and the trust representative. And immediately came, and your mom. You know, it came like that. And this is how I stopped.
Very good. Excellent.
So
you had the information from the field that was also a birth experience, a traumatic birth experience that had to do with trust. So very likely, obviously. Very good.
But yeah, if we would go further, we would see from the field. We don't know actually.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Yeah, it came very hard, a clear picture.
So just to give you some ideas, of course, this is just made up. What could have happened in this constellation when you have the mother, the client, and the trust there, right? If the representative of the client would feel the urge to go down, to crawl up, yeah, you know you need a rebirthing because this is a trauma, a birth trauma, if they go in the fatal position, yeah? Then you would see how the mother reacts to that, if there's an interrupted movement or not. And then you would observe the third person, because everything is a repetition, who is the cause of this issue, right? Stepping out of the shadow. So this is exactly how you start a family constellation. It's already from everything, you know, you have received information while you were silent from, and the information you have received from your client, it all comes together as one.
So you choose the representative as a cause, and what's the cause? We don't know, but you just frame it as a cause, and then you.
No, Tamara said for the trust.
For the trust.
Because that's apparently what you were talking about. Oh? Very good. Okay, now swap roles. How was it, Yuko, when you were facilitating?
First, when we meditate, start like going to the inner, I start feeling she has a very strong identity. She had this energy all coming into herself. I didn't share it too, but then I just wait and see what comes, how I feel. And Tamara's already ready to share with me what she wants to constellate. And that was actually about herself, you know. It doesn't belongs to, it's not recognized by any other people, right? No.
I shared that I don't feel I'm heard well from other people. People don't hear me well.
But I only felt like the strong light within her, like really like, you know, it's there. Then after I heard that what she liked to constellate, then start feeling of father. And in my mind, I thought then, you know, maybe father then mother, but I didn't feel anything. I don't see any mother or, you know, anything but further, and then further lineage, the grandfather and grandmother. And the fear, I forgot. Yeah, so only this I try to see some other things like mother or like other, you know, Tamara's partner or whoever, but I don't see anything. Only the strong line and the representative is only father and Tamara. To further to that relation of the parents, and we didn't know how we should lead further, but that's how I saw it.
So who did you choose as a first representative for Tamara's constellation?
Father.
Only father.
Father, then and the fear. No, what was the feeling, the emotion?
The father and the emotion of what?
You want me to help you?
Yes.
Because you forgot, actually. You told me that you feel to put my father, and immediately you said, and grandfather and the mother of the father are there. This is what you said, and then you were in doubt of if you should put emotion, because I put emotion in your constellation, and then you went to thinking, shall I put also fear or whatever? And then I said, no, this is enough. Let's stop, like this is the beginning, and if it's needed, it will show. Yeah. This is how we did.
Only so this three.
So you could, did you not consider to put a representative for the client there?
Herself too, yes.
Yeah, you did.
Important. Yes. Her and father. Then,
good, very good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure you have seen a clear picture also. You might have forgotten half of it and struggle to find the words for it now. But the most important thing is of this exercise that you feel in yourself, that you see for yourself how it works, to connect with the morphogenetic field and follow the information you get.
It was interesting. Only see that picture and then nobody else. You know, there are many
and that's
other.
Beautiful, because I wanted you to show and experience in your own, on your own, that this is actually so easy. Yeah. To connect with the morphogenetic field of a client. It is that easy. It's exactly what you just did. All of you. Huh? Okay. Great. Okay, so let's go back to our teaching content. Okay, so now we talk about the group. Can you see that? Leading the group? Yeah, CAI. Can you see that?
Yes, we see all the screen, also the left.
Oh,
it's not full screen.
Is it not? It's full screen for me. So let me take that out again. Okay. And now?
Super.
Do you see the full screen? Okay. Right. So now we are talking about leading the group. CAI. CAI is like there's a German. We say we have a word bridge. That means we are memorizing abbreviations better or content better when we got an abbreviation for it that is a catchy. I don't know whether in English that's a word bridge or not. So CAI is this kind of word bridge that helps you to memorize what it takes to lead a group. Because I'm just thinking everybody knows CIA, and it's just, you know, the two words, the two jumbled up. So it's CAI. What does it mean? And I have to tell you a story about that. So, because I'm a big dog lover, I have many, many dogs, and I rehome many, many dogs and foster them. And I learned a lot from my dogs. I learned group behavior from my dogs. And this goes 1-to-1 with people. Exactly the same. When you are leading a group, I would like you to picture you in a pack of dogs or wolves, and you are the leader. That's all you need. And I tell you exactly what the leaders have. They have 3 attributes or 3 traits that they use. And that's why they are the leader. And the whole pack wants them to be the leader. Not one doesn't want them to be the leader, because you are the only one who is fulfilling all of these 3 requisites, and nobody else does. And the first one is you have the trust of the pack to do the right decision. Trust, yeah? That means as a leader, you have to be confident, but not arrogant. Yeah? Confident that you know what to do, because you yourself trust the morphogenetic field more than anybody else in the room. That is the C, confident. Then the next one is you have the oversight to step in when the pack needs order. You know when somebody needs to put the foot down, and it is certainly you. And that means that you are assertive, not aggressive, or dismissive. You always respect the others, but you are the only one who has the oversight. Yeah? And that gives you the assertiveness. And the third is you have the strength to lead through unknown terrain. Yeah? You are the one who has the emotional and the physical strength to lead through unknown terrain. This my meaning that you are in charge to make decisions. You are the only one in charge, and everyone is following you, right? And that is what you like when we talk about body language. We'll remember how you convey that. So CAI means that as a group leader, you need to be confident, assertive, and in charge. Yeah? Confident, assertive, and in charge. So remember CAI, then jumble up the letters CAI, and then you remember confident, assertive, and in charge. When I wake you up in the morning, 3 a.m., and I say, what does a group leader needs? Then you will say CAI, right? Because that is what you will remember. And that is all you need to lead a group through everything. And all sorts of things can happen when you have a group together. And we will talk about that now. Because there is such a thing as group dynamics. Now, hands up who is already leading groups. David, Yuko, Tamara. Great. So let us share a little bit. David, what groups are you leading? You are muted.
Sometimes co-facilitate stuff on the path of love, which is it's a trauma-based. People come there to rid themselves of trauma, basically.
How big are your groups in average?
Normally, in the groups that you're working with, 7 to 10.
Yeah. And what were the challenges you came up with?
Oh, the key thing is to hold the space.
Hmm?
The key thing is to hold the space. So, you know, because there's such a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes people are quite out of control, and just, you know, I would agree. You know, if you're confident, you're assertive, and you're in charge, you hold the space.
Yeah.
It's the
Very
most
good.
important.
Very good. Great. Thank you for sharing. Yuko, what kind of groups do you lead?
For group, not the one-on-one session, but
just
for
groups.
And I used to do yoga instructor, so I hold students and direct, and that's a long time ago. But now and then I do tour guide for
Tour guides.
yeah. Then a bunch of them comes, and I feel like a shepherd, you know. I have to direct them, and just, you know, taking care of them. I don't know what to do but you know, many people all over the place, so I do the group really to be confident
Mm-hmm.
and direct where to go, what to do.
Well, you certainly need to be in charge there.
Oh yeah, otherwise in big
You're herding
trouble.
cats. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Very good. Excellent. And Tamara, what groups are you? You're leading dance groups, right?
Yes,
dance
I
therapy
have
groups.
yeah, many experience in dance groups and working with many dancers at once, like or even 100. So all these things I practiced through the life. And last 5-6 years I'm leading several groups like where we work energy, where we do energy healing, where we do awareness coaching, and also trauma-based conversations. So groups are from 5 to 15 people.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, everything what David said, it's very through the practice I started to be more confident, and I know how to hold space. I feel very confident in that, and I'm grateful for the dance experience, because artists are very self-centered and, you know, all about themselves. And when they are in the group, you know, it's you learn so much how to bring them in the subject, bring them in the focus, so it helped me a lot with the work today.
Great. Very good. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. So you all have then, not all, but most of you have experienced what happened if it goes sideways in your group, right? When something is out of control, you are not on the topic anymore. You feel you're losing the leadership, and that is because of group dynamics. They start with when you have 3 or more people, you have a group. With 3 or more people, you have either the group together as one, and you on the other side, so the group can go against you, or you have the group scattered, and you on this side, and you can't hurt them, right? Or you are part of the group, and you are not conveying, you know, you are not able to convey what you are there to convey, because they absorb you. And we want to avoid all of that dynamics. We do not want a group dynamic to develop in a family constellation. A family constellation is maybe different to the group because the people are coming they are not forming they shouldn't form a group. They should be all by themselves, you know, centered. They should not relate to anybody else. That is important in family constellation. This is why we want to really focus on not letting any group dynamics develop during our workshop. No? So a great way to set off a group dynamic is discussion. If you're opening up a topic for discussion, everybody has a say to everything. And most people are very adamant or very stuck to their opinions even, right? And all of a sudden, this discussion takes the whole space over. And you cannot facilitate a constellation anymore. So discussions are to be avoided by making a clear rule that everybody is only talking to you, not to somebody else. Yeah? You have to establish at the beginning of your workshop that everybody has his safe space, his own seat with a bit space around, and that's the bubble they are in, and nobody is allowed to burst the bubble. Yeah. By addressing something to them. If they want to address something, they have to go through the facilitator. It all has to be communicated to the facilitator. No crossing over of conversations at all. First rule. The next one is, and that goes in with that same, it's not a discussion with many people. It's just if one is commenting towards another participant. That is an invasion of their privacy. Yeah. Nobody's allowed to comment on somebody else. Also not good comments, like well done, right? This is not about bullying somebody. This is about commenting, judging, anything, right? So that it takes care of if you establish at the beginning of the workshop, everybody's just talking to me. In the workshop, in the breaks, they can come in groups and do whatever they like. But during the workshop, when we work, there is no commenting, there is no discussion. Everybody who has to say is talking about themselves, not about anybody else, and they are talking to me about it. No? Second rule. Third, what sets up of group dynamics. A participant wants to help another participant. Somebody, for example, is emotionally resonating with something you have explained, or as a spectator, as an observer in the group, resonates heavily with a representative and starts to cry. Yeah. There is guaranteed somebody on the group who is going across the room to take them in their arms. Yeah. What do you think about that? Is that nice to do such a thing? Tamara?
When this kind of thing happens, I always feel that they are taking away the participants' process. You know, in a way,
Totally.
They don't allow them to go through what they need to go.
Absolutely correct. 100%. That is absolutely the case. And since we want them all to go through their processes, and we don't want anybody else, the one who is supposedly helping, what do? They say, I'm part of your pain. I'm an important part of your pain because I can soothe it. It's all about them. All of a sudden, something that has nothing to do with them is all about them. And they also feel in the right because they are only nice. Yeah? So it's an utterly selfish thing to do in a situation like this, to go to somebody else and hug them when they are releasing emotion. It doesn't feels good for the other one at all, anyhow, especially because they don't even know each other. And it's exactly what Tamara said. The process, the strength of this release is taken away. It's interrupted. So this also is taken care of when you establish at the beginning of the workshop to say, nobody is talking to each other, only to me, and nobody is going to anybody else. Clear rules, just clear rules to be clear that that's not accepted if anybody gets up and invades the bubble of somebody else. Now we have the exemption when couples or friends coming and they like to sit together. I like to split them up, by the way. So I like to recommend that they take different seats and not sit together. However, I can't make them do things. If they want to sit together, then that's their choice. But also be aware they will do that a lot because they are used to that. And here I have to say that's not my concern because they have their own little thing going on. Yeah. And they apparently both agree to it because they come together, they sit together. So it's not so me as a facilitator, if one hugs the other, I don't care. No. That's their thing. You can do that differently, but I think that's not my concern. Distractions can also set off a group dynamic. A typical example is when you're sitting in the room, there's a constellation going on, or you are explaining something, or there's a guided meditation, and all of a sudden there's outside of your room a big bang or something, a huge noise. Everybody's going up, looking there, maybe going to the window, looking outside, right? And then, oh, what was that? And then they forgot all the rules because they think they stepped out of the space of family constellation and created their own one through this distraction. Yeah. So what is important is that when something happens that is totally unexpected and that everybody, other than there's a huge earthquake and you have to leave the room for safety, of course, or fire, but if there's just something going outside of the room that is not endangering your work at all, yeah, you would immediately take over the lead as a pack leader, stand up and say, ignore that before they even can react to it. Yeah, you're not waiting till they start to move. You say, ignore that. That's just a car, whatever, an exhaust of a car exploding or whatever you come up with, and immediately continuing with what you were just doing. Immediately. Yeah. Don't give them space to create a group dynamic out of a distraction. So group dynamics that happens not very often, but it can happen. If a group dynamic starts to form, the risk is that they turn against the participants, or worst case against you, right? Because as a group, they feel they have no leader anymore and they take over the lead. And there's guaranteed one in this group, and this is happening, who wants to sit on your chair. You often have one in the group who wants to sit on your chair anyhow. And if there's a group dynamic developing, they are the first to jump onto it. No? And these are the ones who always have the questions and the last word. So they're bombarding you with questions in the workshop, so you cannot focus on anybody else. And then when you answer them, they have another answer. Like they confirm you. That's in the worst case. I have the same experience, you know. So what you see here happening is that somebody wants to sit in the chair of the leader. Obviously, they are not there as a leader. They are there as participants. They are not in their right space. And if they don't have, if they have a chance, if there's a group dynamic developing, let's say there's a distraction, they would start to step into this role that is now vacant, the role of the leader. Yeah. And they can either decide to turn against the participants or against you. So this has to be taken care of before this ever can happen. And you will see somebody like this. It is quite easy to, you know, you get a feel for it. No? What are we doing with these supposed leader on the waiting for the space to create it, to jump in and take over the lead? What are we doing to not let it happen at all? What do you think? Is there anything you can think of? Do we send them out of the room? I had it only once, I have to say, so it's not very often. I just, you know, it's just my personal experience. Not very often. No, not once. It was a few times, but one comes to mind that was a bit severe. What I said is, I got up and I went to them and I asked them to stand up. And I said to me, why don't you sit on my chair? And I sat on his. And the group got very nervous about that. Because in the end, they all have paid for me to facilitate the family constellation, not for a random person, you know, to sit there and blob. Once they are in the position they are supposedly want to be, and the group will turn against them. Yeah, that is why you use, like the Shaolin monks, they use the energy that is created by the opponents and use it against them. Yeah. So now we have the group dynamic energy that is boiling up against you, and you divert it that it's against them. And that works brilliantly. So that's your last resort. If something like this ever happened to you, you know, remember my words, be bold, and let them have your chair. So now we talk. David vanished, unfortunately, but I hope he finds his way back to the World Wide Web to us. Now we are talking about leading the representatives. Of course, in a family constellation, we have the client that we talked about. We have the group as a whole that we have to handle, and we have the representatives in the family constellation that we also need to lead. Yeah. So it's a bit complex, and this is why I break it down in steps to make you be aware of the necessary steps you need to take, or the observations you need to do, to be prepared that you have multiple relationships going on there, that you are leading them all at the same time with confident assertiveness and with being in charge. So, as you do with a group, you also prepare the representatives for their role. So you establish rules. Because the good thing is about rules is when they break a rule, you can say, you can't do that because we just said it's a rule. If you never said anything, they ask you, why can I not do that? You know, and you need to argue with them. And you don't want that. A leader doesn't argue. A pack leader never argues with their pack. Yeah, they say it is so, and that's it. Yeah. So you establish the rule towards the representatives that, for example, they don't talk unless they ask you, if they can, raising the hands. They can only talk when they raise their hand, and you come to them, and then you would ask them to whisper in your ear what they want to say. You don't allow them to say it out loud, because it might is not helpful for the constellation, what they want to say. Yeah. And then you decide if they should say it and how they should say it, because we use the word, not just certain words, certain sentences of resolution, and they will not suggest that. They will come up with some slang, with some, you know, stories that has no power. So then you would suggest, if you want them to say something because you think it's right, then you say, okay, say to them, blah, blah, blah. No, not what they have suggested, just blah, blah, what you think is right. But in order to do that, you need to prepare the representatives that that's the way you would do it. So you would clearly explain how, as a representative, they have to behave. Then the next question is, by leading the representative, does the client want to be represented? We discussed that before. Michelle brought that to the table from her experience. It is a choice. You can ask your client if they want to represent themselves or if they want a representative for themselves. And that's equal. I mean, whatever the client chooses. But then you stick with this choice. I would not mendel them up. So you have all of a sudden two people in the constellation who are the same individual. Yeah. So just keep one, either the client or the representative. And if the client is represented, the client sits in the circle. He is an observer. Yeah. Of course, if you have a question, like when you see something in the constellation, you can still have a conversation with your client. So let's say you see something in the constellation and you suspect something happened to the mother, like she might has aborted a child. Then you would ask your client, do you know from your mother if one of your siblings is aborted? Did she have an abortion? You can ask them information and they might say yes or no. But you don't allow your client to talk from the role of the observer to the representative. Yeah, that would be like any other representative, any other observer would just talk to a representative, or like Michelle said, stand up and go into the constellation. Yeah, there is a lack of leadership, of course. And it's normally also not necessary at all, because if there would be an information from the morphogenetic field that somebody is missing, you as a facilitator would get it more than anybody else. Yeah, and that's the other trust. So if somebody gets up and wants to jump into a constellation, you say, go back to your chair. There's no question about it. And if you feel that maybe there is a person missing, then after a few moments, you can say, now you can get up, and you take over the lead and you direct them where to put themselves. Yeah. But you don't allow them to go through with this. They have to follow your lead. The other way is leading the representatives is with your hands, physically with your hands. So you can ask your client to put their hands on the shoulders of the representative on the back and lead them gently through the room and place them somewhere. And that was a lot done, especially in the old family constellation. That was how every constellation started, with the family, and then the client leads them and puts them in position. However, with the new family constellation, that's not needed. Nobody needs to touch a representative. They can just find their own space. But if it's helpful for you, and it might be, ask your client to position them, because it might give you some information. And remember, the morphogenetic field is always working through them at all times. So that would be another information from the field. Yeah. And of course, your representative needs to be focused and collected. So they're not chit-chatting or giggling or doing anything. Yeah, they need to be as focused as you are as a facilitator. And that helps if you ask them not to look at each other at the beginning, because they might, see a person, like the body from the workshop there. So they need a moment to connect with the field, not looking at anyone before you allow them to turn their gaze towards each other. We talked about that. When you have a giggling or chatting going on, don't go with it. Don't start to giggle as well, obviously. Yeah, you would ask them to stop that. You would ask them to close their eyes, take a deep breath, letting everything go, then open the eyes again and not looking at anybody, looking at the floor, looking at the wall. Yeah, and that will stop. You can ask the representatives to change their positions. That's also a way to be guided by the field. But you need to be careful that you are not directing it as if you would be a director of a movie set or so. Yeah, you need to avoid that. So the client, if they want to change the position of the representative, at the beginning, yes, later on, no. Once the representative has started to move, they cannot change it. If they at the beginning decide, oh, actually now I think my father is here and my mother, that's fine. But when you said to the representatives, close your eyes, take a deep breath, connect with the morphogenetic field, and then they open their eyes again, the client cannot interfere anymore. That's it. Yeah. Now the field takes over the movements of the representative. The representatives can always change their positions, and you allow them that, but they need to be slow. You are not allowing them to rush. Every movement from the field is slow motion. Yeah? If they are rushing, you ask them to go back to the position where they have been and start again. Take it slow and check in every step if that's still right to go. So they find the right position, which is very precise and is exactly what you need to know. The facilitator is allowed to change the positions of the representatives, but remember, you are not directing a stage. So that needs to be a clear information of the morphogenetic field. Yeah. So last but not least, we are talking about changing the words. So first of all, you always want to find the shortest way to express everything. The shortest, every filling words, there's always a short sentence that they need to say. Yeah, there's no comma, there's no buts. It's not a dialogue. It's a short and sweet sentence, like the sentences of resolution that you learned already. Stop the representative if they start to go on with saying something. Just stop them. Just say, that's enough. Don't say any more. Remember to change slang words into words of power. It's very, very important, because no representative will come up with a powerful word. They always come up with their normal day-to-day speech, what they have. Look at the body language and suggest the appropriate words for acknowledging what is. So when the representative has a fist, that's body language for aggression, right? Anger. And then the representative who has a fist wants to say, I love you. Yeah? We are not going with I love you. We are going with the body language. So you said, no, you don't say that. You say, I hate you. Yeah? Always acknowledging what is. Body language overrules any kind of thoughts and words. Use the 3 magic words if in doubt. One of it will fit. Always. If you can't come up with a sentence, just use the word. No explanation needed. Okay. We are a little bit over, but I would like you to talk about the traps to fall into as well. And we talked about everything. It's just a summary, really. The client takes over the lead, of course. You don't want that. You pull it back. The lead, through confident assertiveness and putting yourself in charge with his body language. Yeah? With your whole body language, you are taking over the lead again. The group takes over the lead. We talked about that. Group dynamics. Yeah. The trap here is to not allow that to happen at the beginning when it started. You need to be assertive. When does this group dynamic start? And cut it off right there. So you're not coming into the group dynamic at all. We talked about one person in the group takes over the lead, what we can do. And the last one is making a mistake. the trap is to think it's a mistake. It's not a mistake. You think it's a mistake. What you have to do is own it. It is what it is. The morphogenetic field wants this to happen for some reason that you don't know. Yeah, nothing to be embarrassed about or worried about. It is what it is. If you think you have forgotten a representative, if you think you haven't used the right word, if you think your client is worse than before, that's just a thought. It's not a mistake. It is exactly what it's supposed to be. You just need to own it. Yeah. Right? It's happening in your head. That's basically what it is. Yeah. If you feel confused in a family constellation, focus on the nearest family member, the family of origin or the nuclear family. Go back to mother, father, child, because sometimes you get confused if you have too many representatives and too many dynamics. Yeah. Let them all sit down. Go back to mother, father, child. There's always something, the client being the child or being a parent, there's always something to be solved. Yeah. Instead of being confused and not knowing what to do and letting it slide and you know, letting your lead to slide. So you are leading with wisdom, with the wisdom that you have being a pack leader, no? And you don't need authority for it, although it might sound like authority because you say, don't do that, do that, yeah? But you do that with the intent or out of the wisdom that you have, because you know why they have to do that, not because I say so. You know, they don't need to know that, but you know why they have to do that for a good reason. So that's the wisdom that is behind it. Another trap to fall into is not to close a constellation at the right time, meaning either too early or too late. Yeah. Most often beginners close too late. We always close a constellation at the peak of the energy. When there's a peak of the energy, it does not even need to come to a conclusion. When the energy is high, when there is a sigh of release in the client, when there is a sigh of release in the representative of the client, that's when we close it, regardless where it is. That's the movement we are looking for. Another trap is to want to finish a constellation. That's the same trap. You go on and on and on with the constellation because you think there needs to be a finish. No, we are not having a Hollywood movie here. We don't want a happy end. We want the highest amount of energy where release is taking place. That's where we finish. That's the finish, right? It's often tears or a hug or somebody says thank you or somebody, you know, it's something you will feel where there is the energy is high. We talked about that. It's a mistake. It's not a mistake. And then at the end, the client wants to talk about the meaning of the constellation. You should not do that neither, because A, you have no time for that in the facilitation. B, you take strength out of the facilitation because the movement goes on. So you take some strength out of it. It's like hugging somebody who's crying. So allow them the movement, allow them their doubt, allow them to think about it. You know, they think they need an explanation. They don't need an explanation. The family system doesn't need an explanation. Yeah. And then, of course, the client is not satisfied with the result. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm disappointed. I thought I would feel more, or I really wanted to constellate my relationship with my brother, and you did just my grandparents, and I think that's, you know, does nothing for what anyhow, all these things, right? This can happen. Yeah. How we deal with this is clearly to talk about expectations and the work of Bert Hellinger going with the morphogenetic field and trusting the field that what has happened is good. And if he would have known it better, he wouldn't be here because he wouldn't need help. Because if he would know already where the problem was and how to handle it, he would have healed himself. But he has obviously not, because he's here. So this is evidence that whatever is in his mind doesn't work. Yeah, so he has to let go of it. and you know, succumb to the fact that the family system wanted to show something else. And you can also tell your clients you can trust the field. It is working in your favor. It always does. You have to allow it up to half a year for the movement to come to an end, right? So you cannot possibly know what the end is of the family constellation until half a year has passed. Right. So I round up today's meeting with another quote. And that is not from Bert Hellinger. It's from his favorite poet, Rainer Maria Rilke, German poet, very, very famous. And Bert Hellinger loved it so much. He was quoting it. He was citing it. He was reading his books in the evenings. He was like, that was his inspiration. And he's a very spiritual poet, of course. So I chose this quote for you to finish up this part of the module. If you have this love for what is humble, and try very simple as someone who serves to win the confidence of what seems poor, then everything will become easier for you, more coherent and somehow more reconciling, not in your conscious mind perhaps, which stays behind, astonished, but in your innermost awareness, awakeness, and knowledge. Also words that cannot be explained, and they will just resonate. Okay, I leave you here, and I see you tomorrow, same time, same place. And if you have any questions, we will talk about that at the beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.